the eternal throne. Ambassador Kira Vasquez stepped off the transit pod onto the crystalline platform of Zephyros Prime, her boots clicking against what looked like compressed starlight. The air shimmered with an odd quality, too still, too perfect, as if even the wind had been commanded to behave. "Welcome to the Eternal Empire," said her guide, a tall Zephyrin named the Lauren Vex. His skin shifted between silver and gold, a trait of his species that indicated emotional states. Right now he showed reverence, deep golden reverence. "His Radiance, Emperor Cullen the Undying, has granted you an audience. This is an honor bestowed upon only 17 beings in the past 4 centuries. Kira adjusted her diplomatic sash, the blue and white of Earth's unified coalition stark against her dark uniform. "For centuries? The same emperor?" "The same emperor for 2,347 years, the Lauren corrected, his tone suggesting she'd asked if water was wet. "His Radiance assumed the eternal throne when the great darkness threatened to consume our system. He saved us. He guides us still." As they walked through gardens that seemed sculpted from dreams themselves, flowers that sang in harmonics, trees bearing fruit that glowed with inner light, Kira noticed something disturbing. Every statue, every hologram, every carved relief showed the same face, angular, imperious, with eyes that promised both mercy and annihilation. "Tell me about your government structure," Kira said, her diplomatic training kicking in. Thalarin's colors shifted to confused orange. "Structure? There is his Radiance. There is his will. What other structure could exist? But surely there are ministers? Advisors? Local governors? Ah yes, the chosen." Thalarin's gold returned. "Those whom his Radiance elevates to serve his vision. They hold their positions until he decides otherwise." "How long does that usually take?" "The current Minister of Agriculture has served for 600 years. The Stellar Fleet Commander for 900. They serve until his Radiance determines they are no longer useful." Kira kept her expression neutral, but her mind raced. She'd studied dozens of alien civilizations during her 15 years in the diplomatic corps, but the Zephyrin Empire was unique, not for its power or technology, but for its complete stagnation masked as stability. The throne room defied human comprehension. It wasn't just large, it seemed to exist in more dimensions than 3. Kira's eyes watered trying to follow the architecture. At its center, elevated on a platform that floated without visible support, sat Emperor Cullen. He was beautiful in the way a black hole was beautiful. Terrifying, absolute, inescapable. His form seemed solid and liquid simultaneously, and when he spoke, reality itself seemed to pause and listen. "Ambassador Vasquez of Earth?" His voice resonated not in her ears but in her bones. "Your coalition requests a trade agreement. Amusing, given your species discovered faster-than-light travel merely 2 centuries ago. We were already ancient when your ancestors learned to make fire." Kira bowed at precisely the angle her briefing had specified. "Your Radiance honors us with this audience. We may be young but we offer something unique, perspective born from change." A sound like distant thunder? Was he laughing? "Change. Yes, your briefing documents fascinate me. You have had." He paused as if the concept baffled him. 43 different leaders of your unified government in just 200 years? "We practice democratic rotation of power, your Radiance. Every 5 years our citizens choose new leadership. Why would you willingly embrace such chaos?" The Emperor leaned forward, and Kira felt the weight of his attention like a physical force. "I have guided the Zephyrin people for millennia. I have seen threats rise and fall. I have made decisions no temporary leader could make, with vision spanning centuries. Why would you hobble yourselves with constant change?" This was the moment Kira had prepared for. The real test. "With respect, your Radiance, we believe that no single being, however wise, can represent the needs of all people for all time. Power concentrated too long in one set of hands, however benevolent, inevitably loses touch with those it governs." The throne room went deathly silent. Thalarin's colors flashed through panicked reds and oranges. Several courtiers gasped audibly. Emperor Cullen stood. The movement was simple but the universe seemed to shift with him. Bold words, young human. His voice was soft now, which was somehow more terrifying. "Tell me, do you think me out of touch with my people?" Kira met his gaze. "I think, your Radiance, that I'd like to find out. Not through your ministers or your chosen, but by walking among your citizens. If you're confident in your people's contentment, you won't refuse such a simple request." The Emperor studied her for what felt like an eternity. Then, impossibly, he smiled. "Granted. The Lauren will escort you wherever you wish. Speak to whomever you desire. He settled back onto his throne. I am curious what you think you'll discover. As they left the throne room, the Lauren whispered urgently, Ambassador, such impertinence could have seen you erased from existence. Why risk it? Kira smiled grimly. Because someone has to ask the questions no one else will. Voices in the eternal shadow. The merchant quarter of Zephyros Prime bustled with activity, but Kira noticed something odd. Everyone moved with purpose, yes, but it was mechanical, prescribed. Street vendors occupied the exact same positions they'd held yesterday. The Lauren had shown her historical holos dating back decades where the very same stalls stood in identical locations. This is Merrick's Ken. The Lauren introduced an elderly Zephyrin whose skin had faded to pale silver with age. He has operated this textile stall for 140 years. Kira smiled warmly. That's remarkable dedication. Tell me, Merrick's, what made you choose this particular trade? The old merchant's colors flickered, a brief flash of something Kira couldn't identify before settling into neutral silver. His radiance decreed that the Ken family shall maintain textile trade in this district. We honor his wisdom. But did you ever want to do something else? Perhaps work with those beautiful singing flowers I saw in the palace gardens? Merrick's colors went still. Completely still, no shimmer, no shift. His radiance knows what is best. My place is here. Over the next 3 days, Kira interviewed merchants, artists, teachers, and engineers. The pattern repeated endlessly. Every Zephyrin knew their role, performed it competently, and never questioned it. When she asked about dreams or ambitions, they spoke of serving his radiance more perfectly. On the 4th day, the Lauren brought her to the Archives of Innovation, a massive crystalline structure at the city's edge. Here we preserve all advancements made during his radiance's reign, the Lauren explained, his gold shimmer showing pride. 30 floors of achievements. But as Kira explored, a troubling picture emerged. The top 15 floors were ancient, inventions from the first 1,000 years of Cullen's reign. Gravity stabilizers. Quantum communications. Biological immortality treatments. Stellar cartography that mapped entire galactic arms. The lower floors grew sparser. The most recent innovation, a new alloy for ship hulls, was dated 73 years ago. The Lauren, Kira asked carefully, when was the last time a Zephyrin discovered something truly revolutionary? His colors shifted to confused orange. Revolutionary? But we have achieved perfection under his radiance's guidance. What revolution could be necessary? That evening, back in her quarters at the diplomatic residence, Kira filed her encrypted report to Earth. The Zephyrin Empire is dying from the inside. Not from war or disease but from stagnation. They've achieved stability by sacrificing adaptation. Request permission to implement Protocol Socrates. They need to remember how to ask, why? The response came within hours. Permission granted. Proceed with caution. The next morning, Kira asked the Lauren to arrange something unusual, a gathering in one of the city's public forums. Just her speaking to any citizens who cared to listen. This is highly irregular, the Lauren protested. Public addresses require his radiance's pre-approval, and the content must be reviewed by. The Lauren, does his radiance fear the words of one human ambassador? The colors racing across his skin showed his internal conflict. Finally, pale gold won out. I will arrange it. 2 days later, Kira stood in the Forum of Eternal Harmony before perhaps 300 curious Zephyrans. The Lauren lurked at the edge, his colors anxious purple. I'm not here to tell you what to think, Kira began. I'm here to share a story about my own world. 300 years ago, we had nations ruled by single individuals who claimed divine right to govern. Kings, queens, emperors, they were born to power and held it until death. The crowd listened silently, their collective colors neutral. Then something changed. People began asking questions. Why should birth determine leadership? Why should one person's wisdom outweigh the collective wisdom of millions? What happens when a good ruler ages and grows distant from their people's needs? But his radiance is eternal, someone called out. He cannot age or grow distant. Kira nodded. Perhaps. But can anyone, even an eternal being, truly understand the hopes and fears of every individual? My species learned that leadership requires constant renewal, not because old leaders are necessarily bad, but because new perspectives reveal blind spots we didn't know existed. A young Zephyrin, barely past adolescence, her colors bright with youth, raised a hand. But without his radiance's eternal guidance, wouldn't we fall into chaos? Who would make decisions? You would, Kira said simply. All of you together. On Earth, we elect representatives who serve limited terms. They debate, compromise, and make decisions knowing they must answer to voters. Sometimes we choose poorly. Sometimes our leaders disappoint us. But we learn, we adjust, and we grow. An older engineer spoke up, his colors skeptical red. His radiance has led us through 7 existential crises. How could term-limited leaders develop such long-term vision? Fair question. But consider, might some of those crises have been prevented if your people had been encouraged to innovate, to question, to adapt? Your archive of innovation shows an empire that stopped growing. Is that really eternal strength or slow decline? The murmuring began then, colors shifting across the crowd like ripples on a pond. Uncomfortable oranges, curious greens, thoughtful blues. DeLorean stepped forward, his colors distressed. Ambassador, I think. She makes them think. The voice cut through the forum like a blade of cold starlight. Emperor Cullen stood at the forum's edge, unannounced, unescorted. The crowd immediately prostrated themselves. Only Kira remained standing. Fascinating, the Emperor continued, walking forward. For 2 millennia, I've provided stability, prosperity, peace. And you, Ambassador, suggest this is insufficient. Kira held his gaze. I suggest that a people who never question will never grow. The weight of eternity. Emperor Cullen did not summon Kira to the throne room. Instead, he appeared in her diplomatic quarters at midnight, a breach of protocol so severe that DeLorean nearly fainted when he found them conversing over tea the next morning. Your Radiance, I was not informed, DeLorean stammered, his colors cycling through panicked reds. Leave us, Cullen commanded gently. The guide fled. Kira poured another cup of tea, real earth tea, imported at great expense. You know, Your Radiance, in human diplomacy, entering someone's private quarters unannounced is considered extremely rude. Yet you do not kneel. You do not tremble. The Emperor's form seemed more solid tonight, less liquid divinity, more physical being. Do you know why I came? To threaten me for corrupting your people with dangerous ideas? To ask if you're right. The admission hit Kira like a physical blow. She set down her teacup carefully. Pardon? Cullen moved to her window, gazing out at the perfect city below. I was 37 when the Great Darkness came, barely an adult by my species measure. Our previous rulers were ineffectual, bickering. The darkness consumed 3 of our 7 worlds in weeks. In desperation, our people turned to me. I had shown promise in the military, had some minor innovations to my credit. They made you emperor? They begged me to save them. And I did. His voice carried the weight of eons. I reorganized our defenses, weaponized technologies we'd kept theoretical, made decisions that sacrificed millions to save billions. When the darkness finally retreated, I had become something else, something between mortal and God. The biological immortality treatments, Kira guessed. Enhanced by something we found in the darkness itself. Ironic, isn't it? The thing that nearly destroyed us gave me eternal life. He turned to face her. They insisted I remain as emperor. They had seen what fractured leadership nearly cost us. I accepted, believing it was temporary. 1 more century, I told myself, until stability was assured. And then there was always another crisis. Not as severe as the darkness but significant. A plague. A stellar anomaly. Economic disruption. Each time, I told myself that this wasn't the right moment to step down. My people needed continuity, stability, certainty. Kira studied him carefully. When was the last real crisis? 433 years ago. A massive solar flare threatened the 3rd planet. His laugh was bitter. I diverted it with technology that's now considered routine. But my people still speak of it as a moment when his radiance saved them. Your Radiance. Cullen. When we're alone, call me Cullen. I've forgotten what it sounds like, my name without the weight of worship. Cullen then. Why are you telling me this? He returned to sit across from her, and for the first time, Kira saw not an eternal emperor but a tired man who'd lived too long. Because in 2,000 years you're the first person who's dared to suggest I might be wrong. Everyone else either worships me or fears me. Usually both. You could step down. Announce a transition of power. To whom? Ambassador, look at my empire. I've created a civilization where no one leads because everyone follows. I've given them peace by taking away their ability to choose. If I step down now, they wouldn't know what to do with freedom. Kira leaned forward. So teach them. Gradually. That's why term limits work. They force societies to develop the systems and skills for peaceful transition of power. You've had 2 millennia to build those systems and instead, you've built a monument to yourself. His colors flashed angry red for just a moment before settling back to neutral. Harsh words. True words. Cullen, you're not a tyrant. I've seen no evidence of cruelty or oppression. But you've created something almost worse. A population that's forgotten how to want anything beyond serving you. That merchant, Merrick's can? He didn't choose his profession. Your young people don't dream of impossible things. Your scientists stopped innovating because perfection has been achieved. You've given them a golden cage and convinced them it's paradise. And your solution is democracy? Term limits? Humans fighting every few years over who gets to lead. Our solution is responsibility. Yes, we fight. Yes, we make mistakes. But when a leader fails us, we can remove them. When society needs to change direction, we can change it. We're messy and chaotic, and sometimes we take 2 steps back before taking 1 forward. But we're alive, Cullen. Your people are stable, safe, and slowly dying. The Emperor stood and walked to the door, then paused. Tomorrow, I will announce a reform committee. Theoretically, to update some administrative protocols. I want you on it. Why? Because you're right. And because I'm terrified. I faced down cosmic horrors, led my people through disasters that would have broken lesser civilizations. But the thought of letting go, of trusting my people to govern themselves. He met her eyes. That's the one thing that truly frightens me. After he left, Kira sat in silence for a long time, then opened a secure channel to Earth. I may have just convinced an eternal emperor to contemplate retirement. Request urgent advisory. How do you teach an entire civilization to govern itself when they've forgotten they ever could? The Committee of Impossible Questions. The Reform Committee convened in a chamber that had last been used 800 years ago, a circular room where Cullen's earliest advisors once debated policy. Dust had been cleared, but the space still felt like a museum piece suddenly brought back to life. Kira was the only human. The other 5 members were all Zephyrans. The Lauren Vex, naturally, Minister of Agriculture Celine Thar, whose 6 centuries of service showed in her faded silver skin. Young Councillor Pix Marin, barely 70 and considered a radical for suggesting crop rotation variations. Fleet Commander Orith Kane, who'd held his position for 900 years. And surprisingly, the merchant Merrick's can. Before we begin, Cullen announced from a simple chair, not a throne, Kira noted, I want you all to understand something. For the first time in 2,000 years, I am asking you not to tell me what you think I want to hear. Tell me what you actually think. The silence was profound and uncomfortable. Pix Marin's colors shifted through nervous patterns. Your radiance, we exist to serve your wisdom. That's exactly what I'm asking you not to say, Cullen interrupted gently. Ambassador Vasquez, perhaps you should explain the purpose here. Kira stood. This committee exists to explore whether the Zephyrin Empire might benefit from governmental restructuring, specifically, the introduction of term limits for leadership positions and the expansion of democratic participation in decision-making. Orith Kane's colors flashed angry crimson. Blasphemy. His radiance is eternal. Our empire is perfect. We need no restructuring. Commander, Cullen said quietly, how old is your stellar fleet? Our vessels are maintained to the highest. How old are the designs? Orith's colors dimmed. The core designs are 1,100 years old, your radiance. With incremental updates, of course. And the Helix Federation we monitor along our border? What's the average age of their fleet designs? 15 years, your radiance, Orith admitted reluctantly. They rotate designs constantly. Inefficient, we've always assessed, but their newest vessels would defeat ours in any serious engagement, Cullen finished. We haven't needed to test this because we've maintained peace. But Commander, what happens when peace ends? The question hung in the air like a physical weight. Merrickskin spoke up, his aged voice trembling slightly. Your radiance, if I may. My grandson approached me last week. He's 63. He asked when he might take over the family stall. The old merchant's colors showed shame. I realized I'd never considered it. Why would I? I'm healthy. I'll live another century easily. But he'll never have his own place, his own purpose. He'll just wait for me to die. That's everywhere, Pix Marin blurted, then immediately looked terrified at her own outburst. But she continued, colors shifting to determined green. The agricultural sector, the arts, trade guilds, everyone's waiting. Waiting for elders to die. Waiting for permission to change anything. Waiting for, I don't know what. Celine Thar, the ancient minister of agriculture, spoke for the first time. Permission to live. That's what they're waiting for. Her colors were sad blue. I've held my position for 6 centuries. I've optimized crop yields, eliminated famines, created abundance. But the last truly new idea I implemented was 400 years ago. Since then, refinements, adjustments. Nothing bold because boldness isn't necessary under perfection. Thalarin's colors showed conflict. But your radiance, isn't this what we wanted? Stability? Peace? An end to the chaos of the old days? The old days, Colorin said slowly, ended 2,000 years ago. None of you remember them. I barely remember them. They've become mythology, the chaotic times before the eternal reign. He stood and paced the circular room. Ambassador Vasquez, tell them about the crisis of 2178. Kira smiled. On Earth in 2178, we faced a near-extinction event. Ecological collapse combined with resource wars. Our global council at the time, led by President Malik Chin, made a series of decisions that saved humanity but were deeply unpopular. Elections came the next year. And you replaced him? Orith asked, confused. In the middle of a crisis? Yes. Chin lost re-election. His successor, President Amara Okafor, took a different approach to the rebuilding. Some of Chen's policies were reversed. Some were expanded. Was it efficient? No. Did it cause some problems? Absolutely. But it also brought fresh thinking when we desperately needed it. That sounds like madness, Orith muttered. Perhaps, Kira agreed. But Earth's population today is 12 billion and thriving. Our democracy is messy but we're innovating, growing, adapting. Meanwhile, your perfect empire hasn't produced a major innovation in 73 years. Your radiance, Celine there said slowly, what exactly are you proposing? Cullen returned to his seat. I'm proposing that I've made a mistake. A 2,000-year-old mistake. I should have stepped down after the crisis ended. I should have built democratic institutions instead of concentrating all power in myself. I should have trusted my people. The room erupted. Oritha's colors flashed through angry reds and oranges. Pix and Merrick showed shocked yellows. Even Thalarin's gold wavered. Your radiance, you can't abdicate. The Lauren protested. The Empire would. Would what? Collapse? Perhaps. Or perhaps it would finally grow up. Cullen's colors shifted to something Kira had never seen before. Vulnerable, open, uncertain. I'm not saying I'll step down tomorrow. But I am saying that this committee's purpose is to design a governmental system that doesn't require my existence. We're going to introduce term limits, starting with every position except one. Mine. We're going to create elected councils. We're going to teach my people to govern themselves. And when that system is stable, when you're all ready. You'll step down, Kira finished. I'll step down. The silence that followed was different from before. Not the silence of obedience, but of genuine contemplation. Kira watched colors shift across all 5 Zephyrans, fear, excitement, confusion, hope, and terror mixing in patterns she'd never seen. Finally, young Pix Marin spoke, her voice stronger than before. Your radiance, I think I would like to try. To imagine a future where I might lead not because I'm chosen by you, but because my peers believe in my ideas. Marixkin nodded slowly. And I would like to tell my grandson that he need not wait for my death to have purpose. Then we begin, Cullen said. Ambassador Vasquez, I believe you have some experience designing democratic systems? Kira smiled. Let's start with the fundamentals. First question, what do you all think makes a good leader? For the first time in 2,000 years, the Zephyrin Empire began to question. The Great Unwinding. The announcement came 6 months after the committee's first meeting. Emperor Cullen, speaking from the Forum of Eternal Harmony rather than his throne room, delivered news that shattered millennia of certainty. Effective immediately, all ministerial and administrative positions will be subject to term limits. Each position holder may serve no more than 50 years before mandatory rotation. Elections for replacement positions will be held by qualified candidates from the relevant sectors, with voting open to all citizens holding expertise in those fields. The empire didn't explode. It didn't descend into chaos. It simply froze. Kira watched from the forum's edge as Cullen continued outlining the reforms. Fleet Commander Orith Kane would transition out within the year. Celine there would train a successor and retire after 6 centuries of service. New councils would form. Democratic institutions would gradually expand. His radiance is abdicating, someone shouted from the crowd, colors flashing panicked red. No, Cullen's voice carried absolute authority. I'm not abdicating. I am evolving. And more importantly, I am trusting you, all of you, to evolve with me. The real shock came 3 days later when Orith Kane shocked everyone by announcing his support for the reforms and his chosen successor. A relatively unknown ship commander named Lyris Ven, only 300 years old and known for her experimental tactical theories that Orith had previously dismissed. Why the change of heart? Kira asked Orith when she found him in the Archive of Innovation, reviewing old military texts. His colors were contemplative purple. I spent 900 years as fleet commander. In that time I fought 3 minor conflicts and 1 serious border dispute. We won them all. He pulled up a holographic display showing fleet compositions. But I won them using tactics I developed in my first century of command. For 800 years I've been refining the same approaches, dismissing new ideas as unnecessary complications. And now I've spent 2 weeks with Commander Ven. She showed me simulations using tactics I considered ridiculous: asymmetric deployment, sacrificial screening, what she calls chaos doctrine. Ambassador, in those simulations she defeats my traditional formations 70% of the time. His colors shifted to embarrassed orange. I've been living on reputation and institutional inertia. It's time I stepped aside before my obsolescence gets someone killed. The transition wasn't smooth. 3 ministers resigned rather than face term limits, calling the reforms an insult to His Radiance's wisdom. Protest movements emerged, both supporting and opposing the changes. The Empire's perfect surface cracked, revealing the tensions that had been building beneath for centuries. The Loren Vex found himself at the center of an unexpected storm. As the Emperor's most visible aide, younger Zephyrans began approaching him with questions he'd never fielded before. Who will we vote for? How do we know what makes a good candidate? What if we choose wrong? One evening he appeared at Kira's quarters, his colors cycling through confused patterns. Ambassador, they're asking me questions I can't answer. What policies do you support? What's your vision for the Empire's future? I've spent 300 years ensuring His Radiance's will was implemented. I don't have a vision, I've never needed one. Kira poured him tea. Welcome to democracy, the Loren. The uncertainty you're feeling? That's freedom. Terrifying, isn't it? Absolutely paralyzing, he admitted. How do your people cope with this constantly? Practice. Education. Lots of debate and occasionally poor decisions we learn from. She smiled. You know what might help? Talk to your people. Not as His Radiance's representative, but as the Loren Vex. What do you personally think the Empire needs? I don't know. Then figure it out. You've got time. The first sector elections were held for agricultural leadership, Celine Thar's replacement. 12 candidates emerged, though 3 dropped out immediately, overwhelmed by the campaign process. The remaining 9 engaged in something the Empire hadn't seen in millennia: public debate. Kira attended one such debate in a rural province, watching as candidates argued over crop allocation, soil renewal techniques, and trade policies. It was clumsy, awkward, with candidates sometimes contradicting themselves or admitting they didn't know answers. The audience's colors shifted between confused orange and intrigued green. A young farmer raised her hand. Candidate Nexus, you say we should experiment with new crops, but what if they fail? Under Minister Thar's guidance, we've never faced famine. Candidate Nexus, a mid-level agricultural administrator, responded, You're right, we might fail. But we're failing now, just slowly. Our yields have stagnated for 2 centuries. The soil is tired. If we don't try something new, famine won't be a risk, it'll be inevitable. Another candidate, Torin Sev, disagreed. Stability has value. I propose incremental changes tested in small zones before empire-wide implementation. Which means nothing changes for decades while we test. Nexus shot back. The debate grew heated. Colors flashed. Voices rose. And then something remarkable happened. The audience started picking sides, discussing among themselves, arguing with each other. Kira leaned over to Pix Marin, who'd accompanied her. Do you see what's happening? Chaos. Pix suggested, though her colors showed excitement rather than fear. Engagement. For the first time in their lives, these farmers are thinking about policy, forming opinions, choosing sides. They're becoming political beings. The election went to Torin Sev by a narrow margin. Nexus conceded gracefully and immediately filed to run for a regional oversight position. Democracy's machinery, rusty from disuse, began to creak back to life. But not everyone was pleased. A movement emerged calling themselves the Eternal Loyalists, Zephyrans who rejected the reforms as a corruption of His Radiance's perfect vision. Their leader, a charismatic engineer named Vorth Kane, delivered passionate speeches calling for a return to true eternal governance. His radiance was tricked by the human. Vorth declared at rallies, his colors burning with righteous gold. She came here spreading the poison of change, convincing him that our perfection was somehow flawed. We must show his radiance that his people still believe in his eternal wisdom. Kira found herself the target of both praise and condemnation. Some called her the liberator, others the corrupter. Death threats arrived, quickly dealt with by security but unsettling nonetheless. I could stop this, Cullen told her during one of their increasingly frequent private meetings. One word from me and the loyalists would dissolve. But you won't, Kira guessed. I won't. Because you're right, they need to work through this themselves. But Ambassador, I won't let them hurt you. I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about what happens when you're actually gone. The loyalists aren't going to just accept your abdication when it comes. Cullen's colors shifted to determined silver. Then we'd better make sure the new system is strong enough to survive without me. Because ready or not, I'm stepping down in 5 years. 5 years? That's aggressive. It's also necessary. Any longer and I might lose my nerve. He smiled, an expression that still seemed strange on his eternal face. Besides, I'm curious what it feels like to just be. Cullen. No radiance. No empire. Just a very old Zephyrin figuring out what to do with eternity when there's no throne to occupy. The first crisis. The crisis came in the 4th year of reforms, when the new democratic systems were still fragile and untested. A massive asteroid swarm, deflected from its natural course by a stellar anomaly, entered Zephyrin space on a collision trajectory with the 4th planet, home to 3 billion citizens. The newly elected Planetary Defense Council had 8 days to respond. Kira was in the council chambers when the alarm sounded. The 12 council members, elected just 6 months prior, stared at the threat assessment with colors cycling through panicked reds and oranges. His radiance must handle this, Council Chair Pix Marin declared. She'd won election on a platform of aggressive innovation. Summon the Emperor. This is beyond our. No. Cullen's voice came not from the throne room but from the back of the chamber. He'd entered unnoticed, dressed in simple robes rather than imperial regalia. This is exactly what you were elected to handle. Your radiance, with respect, we've been in office for 6 months. We need your experience, your technology, your... My what? My 2,000 years of crisis management. Cullen moved to stand among them, not above them. You have all the technology one would use. You have the same data. The only thing you lack is confidence. He looked at each council member in turn. So I'll stay and advise if you want. But this is your decision. Commander Lyris Ven, who'd taken over the Stellar Fleet, pulled up tactical displays. The swarm is too dispersed for conventional weapons. We'd need to coordinate strikes across 17 different trajectories simultaneously. Her colors showed stress but also fierce determination. It can be done, but it requires splitting our fleet into smaller, independent strike groups. Standard doctrine says never divide your forces, but... Standard doctrine was written when I had 900 years of experience and supreme authority, Orith Kane interrupted. He'd taken an advisory role after retirement and attended council meetings. You have permission to ignore my old rules, Commander. There's an alternative, said Councillor Nexus Thal, the agricultural candidate who'd lost to Torin Sev but had won a science council seat. The asteroid swarm is gravitationally unstable. If we could destabilize it further, cause internal collisions, we might reduce the threat volume by 60%. The rest we could handle with conventional deflection. How do we destabilize it? Pix demanded. Controlled detonations at specific gravity points. But the calculations are complex, and if we're wrong... Nexus's colors showed fear. We could make it worse. Accelerate the collision timeline. The council erupted in debate. Kira watched, fascinated, as 12 individuals, most with less than a century of experience, wrestled with a problem that could kill billions. The Lauren Vex, now serving as council administrator, managed the discussion. We need a decision in 3 hours. Fleet repositioning takes time. I vote for Commander Ven's disperse strike plan, said one counselor. It's tested, reliable. I vote for Councillor Nexus's gravity destabilization, interrupted another. It's more elegant and risks fewer ships. We could do both, Kira suggested quietly. Destabilization as the primary approach, disperse strikes as backup if the calculations are off. That's resource-intensive, a fiscal counselor objected. The cost. The cost of failure is 3 billion lives. Pix snapped. Then she caught herself, colors flashing embarrassed. Apologies. I've never made a decision like this. None of us have, the Lauren said gently. That's why we're terrified. But Chair Marin, you need to call a vote. The vote split 7-5 in favor of the combined approach. Immediately, half the dissenters challenged the decision, demanding his radiance override it. Cullen remained silent. Your radiance, one counselor pleaded. Tell us we're right. Or tell us we're wrong. But please guide us. The Emperor's colors shifted through complex patterns. Kira recognized doubt, fear, hope, and something like pride. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. Counselor Marin, you have a mandate from your peers. You have expert advice. You have a plan that, by my assessment, has a 73% chance of success. That's better than many crisis decisions I've made. I will not override you. The decision stands. The next 8 days were the longest of Kira's life, and she wasn't even Zephyrin. The Empire watched as their elected council, not their eternal emperor, coordinated the defense of an entire world. Nexus Thal's calculations proved 92% accurate. The gravity destabilization worked almost perfectly, fracturing the swarm and reducing the threat volume by 58%. Commander Ven's dispersed fleet handled the remainder with precision that would have made Orith Kane proud. 3 ships were lost. 47 crew members died, the first Zephyrin military casualties in 400 years. The Empire mourned them, but the 4th planet survived. In the aftermath, something unexpected happened. The Council didn't celebrate their victory. Instead, they immediately convened an inquiry into what went wrong, how to prevent future casualties, and what improvements could be made to their crisis response systems. Kira found Pix Marin alone in the Council chambers late one night, studying casualty reports. 47 families lost someone because of my vote, Pix said, her colors dim and sad. His radiance would have saved them all. Maybe, Kira said. Or maybe some crisis would have eventually exceeded even his abilities. You saved 3 billion lives, Counselor. And yes, you lost 47. That weight never gets easier to carry. I've spoken to Earth leaders who made similar choices. But you made the call democratically, transparently, and you're holding yourselves accountable. That's leadership. It feels like failure. Because you care. That's why term limits matter. Leaders who never face consequences stop caring about the cost of their decisions. Kira sat beside her. Pix, in 1 year you face re-election. Your voters will judge whether you handled this crisis well. Some will say yes. Some will say no. And you'll have to live with their verdict. I don't know if I can do this for decades. You don't have to. That's the beauty of term limits. Serve your time, pass the torch, let someone else carry the weight. The burden is shared across time and people. No one has to be eternal. Pix's colors shifted slightly toward lighter blue. Did his radiance plan this? The crisis happening now before he abdicates. I don't think even he can plan asteroid swarms. But I think he knew something like this would happen eventually. And I think he needed you all to prove you could handle it without him. The next day, in a public ceremony, Cullen did something unprecedented. He publicly thanked the Council for their service and success. No grand pronouncement of eternal wisdom. Just simple acknowledgement that they had done well. The Eternal Loyalists lost significant support that week. Hard to argue for eternal rule when elected leaders just saved a planet. But Vorth Kane, their leader, simply shifted tactics. His radiance saved us by training them, by giving them the tools. Without him, this success is impossible. We must ensure he never leaves us. The real confrontation, Kira realized, was still coming. The departure. The abdication was scheduled for the anniversary of the asteroid crisis, a symbolic choice that wasn't lost on anyone. Cullen would step down, and the new governmental structure, a hybrid system with an elected executive council working alongside traditional ministries with term limits, would assume full authority. The day before the ceremony, Vorth Kane made his move. 50,000 Eternal Loyalists gathered in the Forum of Eternal Harmony, demanding Cullen rescind the abdication. They weren't violent, but their numbers and passion created a crisis of legitimacy. How could the Emperor step down when so many citizens begged him to stay? Kira stood with Cullen in his private chambers, watching the demonstration on holoscreens. I could disperse them with a word, he said quietly. You could. But that would prove their point, that the Empire still needs your authority. And if I don't? If I proceed with the abdication despite their protests? Then the new government will have to deal with a significant opposition movement. Democracy includes the right to dissent. Kira smiled. Even dissent that advocates for ending democracy. Cullen laughed, a sound that still surprised her after all these months. The paradox of tolerance. Your philosophers debated this extensively, didn't they? And we still haven't solved it perfectly. But we muddle through. A chime announced the Lauren Vex's arrival. He entered with unusual urgency, colors showing stress. Your Radiance, Counselor Marin requests an audience. Urgently. Pix Marin arrived moments later, accompanied by Commander Ven, Torin Sev and surprisingly Merrick's Khan. Your Radiance, Pix began, the Council has voted. We request you postpone the abdication. The silence that followed was absolute. Explain, Cullen said, his voice carefully neutral. The Loyalist movement is larger than we anticipated. If you step down now, we estimate a 27% chance of civil unrest, possibly violence. We need more time to build consensus, to bring the Loyalists into the democratic process peacefully. How much time? A decade? Maybe 2. Kira's heart sank, but she remained silent. This was not her decision. Cullen studied each of them carefully. And you all agree with this assessment? Commander Ven spoke up. Your Radiance, from a security standpoint, the risk is real. But... She hesitated, colors shifting. But I also think we're scared. This is the safe option. Keep you as a safety net a little longer. Torin. Cullen turned to the agricultural minister. I agree with the commander on both counts. The risk is real. And we're scared. Torin's colors showed honest admission. But I also think fear is part of the process. We'll always find reasons to delay. There will always be one more crisis, one more reason to rely on you. Merrick's Khan, Cullen addressed the old merchant who looked uncomfortable being included in such high-level deliberations. You're the only one here who's not a government official. What do you think? Merrick's colors showed conflict, but his voice was steady. Your Radiance, my grandson took over my stall 6 months ago. I fought it, resisted, found reasons to delay. When I finally stepped back, I felt empty, lost. What was I without that stall I'd run for a century and a half? And then I discovered I could do other things. I've been taking courses in stellar engineering, something I was interested in as a youth but never pursued because I was born into the merchant family. I'm terrible at it, but I'm learning, growing. His colors shifted to something like wonder. Your Radiance stepping down is terrifying, but it's also liberating. And watching my grandson make changes I never would have considered, seeing him thrive in ways I never imagined, that's been the greatest gift. Cullen walked to his window, gazing out at the forum where 50,000 citizens demanded he stay. When he turned back, his colors showed a decision had been made. Counselor Marin, I appreciate your concern. And I understand your fear. But my answer is no. Your Radiance. Let me finish. If I postpone now, I'll postpone again. There will always be loyalists, always be risks, always be reasons to stay, just a little longer. I've been telling myself that for 2,000 years. It stops tomorrow. But the risk is yours to manage. That's what government is, managing risk while trusting in your citizens. He smiled. Besides, I won't be gone. I'll be living in the old archives district, teaching history at the university. If there's a true catastrophic crisis, I can still provide advice. But day-to-day governance? That's yours now. All of you. That evening, Kira found Cullen on a balcony overlooking the city. His colors were contemplative purple. Nervous? She asked. Terrified. Excited. Uncertain. He glanced at her. How did you do it? Convince me that ending 2 millennia of stability was the right choice. I didn't convince you. I just asked questions you'd stopped asking yourself. She joined him at the railing. What will you do? After tomorrow? I genuinely don't know. And that's wonderful. His colors shifted to something she'd never seen before, joyful uncertainty. I might travel. There are parts of my own empire I haven't visited in centuries. I want to see how people really live when they're not performing for his Radiance. And if you don't like what you see? If the new government makes mistakes? Then I'll write strongly worded letters to the editor like any other citizen. I might even run for office again someday. There are no term limits on ex-emperors after all. He laughed. Though I suspect I'd lose. Democracy tends to prefer leaders who aren't associated with 2,000 years of absolute rule. The abdication ceremony the next day was not the grand spectacle many expected. Cullen kept it simple. A brief speech, the formal transfer of authority to the Executive Council, and a walk down from the throne platform. No pageantry. No dramatic pronouncements. My people, he concluded, I have guided you for 2 millennia. I've done my best. But now it is time for you to guide yourselves. I leave you not because I doubt you, but because I believe in you. You are ready. And I. His colors shifted through genuine emotion. I am ready to be just Cullen again. The eternal loyalists protested but didn't riot. The council took authority smoothly. The empire continued functioning. And Cullen walked away from his throne, colors showing relief and hope. 5 years later, Kira returned to Zephyros Prime for a diplomatic summit. The empire had changed remarkably. There had been struggles, a contested election, a brief economic disruption, an unsuccessful coup attempt by Vorth Kane that was defeated by the Planetary Defense Council. But they'd weathered it all. She found Cullen teaching a class on crisis management at the Imperial University. The Imperial part was being debated for removal. He wore simple robes and his colors showed the calm contentment of someone who'd found purpose after a long search. Ambassador Vasquez, he greeted her after class. Or should I say Ambassador Emeritus? I heard you retired from the diplomatic corps 2 years ago. Decided to take my own advice about not staying in power too long. She smiled. How's civilian life? Challenging. Humbling. Occasionally frustrating. His colors showed genuine happiness. Absolutely wonderful. I lost a local election for district representative last year. Can you believe it? First electoral defeat in my life. It was devastating and oddly exhilarating. Plans to run again? Considering it. Though my opponent made some good points about my lack of recent administrative experience. He laughed. Apparently, 2,000-year-old experience has an expiration date. They walked through the university district, past political rallies and debate forums, past young Zephyrans arguing passionately about policy, past businesses trying new approaches and sometimes failing, past all the messy vitality of a civilization learning to govern itself. You know what the best part is? Cullen said. Yesterday, a student challenged one of my historical interpretations. Quite rudely, actually. And I realized, I was just a professor. Not his radiance. Just an old Zephyrin with opinions that could be questioned, challenged, even dismissed. And it was perfect. No one needs me to be more than that. His colors shifted to grateful silver. Thank you, Ambassador. For asking the questions. For seeing what I'd stopped seeing. Thank you for listening. Most eternal emperors wouldn't have. They paused at a plaza where a statue of Cullen once stood. It had been replaced by a memorial to the 47 crew members lost in the asteroid crisis. A reminder that leadership had costs, and those costs should be remembered. The council did that, Cullen noted. Removed my statue without asking my permission. It caused quite a controversy. How did you vote in that debate? I didn't. Wasn't a council member, wasn't my place to decide. He smiled at her surprise. Democracy, Ambassador. Still getting used to it, but I think I'm learning. As Kira prepared to depart Zephyros Prime, she filed her final report on the Empire's democratic transition. The Zephyrin Empire spent 2,000 years under single rule. They believed stability required eternity. We introduced them to something more powerful, the idea that leadership should be earned, limited, and renewable. They're still learning. They make mistakes. They argue and sometimes fail. But they're learning to choose. And in choosing, they've finally become free. Term limits aren't just about preventing tyranny. They're about trusting people to govern themselves, even when they're scared. Especially when they're scared. The Zephyrans had one emperor for life. Now they have millions of citizens learning to lead. And that, I believe, is how civilization truly endures.